Hello. Another important theoretical perspective in sociology is the conflict approach. Unlike the structural functional approach, the conflict approach views the world as an arena of inequality. So, before, when we talked about the structural functional approach, we basically looked at social structures and institutions um, that were performing important functions. They were benevolent. They were doing good things for society generally. Sure, there were some dysfunctions occasionally, but those structures would correct themselves so that there would be continued stability and cohesion in society. Um, the conflict approach looks at those same social structures and institutions, but asks a very different set of questions. The conflict approach assumes that society is an arena of inequality, that people are battling over power, they're battling over resources or access to opportunities, and some gain and some lose from various social arrangements. And that's really the central question the conflict theorists are looking at. They ask who gains and who loses from a particular social arrangement. Karl Marx is, of course, at the center of conflict theory. He put class at the center of the equation and suggested that really what we see around us in the social world and what shapes society is this battle between the bourgeois class, the owner managerial class, and the proletariat, the working class. The workers bring to the marketplace their labor and they sell it. And the owner class, the bourgeois class, attempts to maximize profit off of that labor. And so Karl Marx puts that at the center of the equation and suggests that this is really what drives a lot of what we see in society. An example that might be useful is the professional boxing industry. There is a kind of an owner managerial class, if you will, the arena operators, the promoters, and there are a very few boxers, a handful really, maybe a dozen, that make quite a bit of money off of boxing, yet the industry itself, the whole system, generates a tremendous amount of economic activity and a tremendous amount of profits. Um, think about the tickets and vending and parking, um, to speak nothing of the rents charged to use arenas, the gym operators and owners, the people selling sports equipment, shoes, boxing gloves, mats, and so on. There's a lot of economic activity there, yet the vast majority of the workers in that industry make very little. I have had several boxers in my classes, and really they make a few $100s a fight for most of their professional lives, and it's something that really isn't quite sustainable in the long run for the vast majority of the workers in that industry. So one could argue, if you applied the conflict theory here, that the system is set up to exploit certain categories of people. In the case of boxers, it's often lower class or lower or working class males, oftentimes of color, at least in the United States context, who are generating a lot of economic activity, most of which, though, is going to someone else. And it's that battle over resources or access to opportunity or a living wage that drives much of what is going on in society, according to Karl Marx. Others, of course, put gender at the center. Feminist theory suggests that it's not just class that is the system of stratification at work here, but also gender, and that there's a fundamental battle um, over power and resources between men and women, and some categories of women and some categories of men. Others, of course, have argued that it's really race that is at the center of what we see in terms of social change and the way that society is organized. Really, it is all of these. It is race, class, and gender that affect what we see around us. And when we look at the world from the conflict perspective, we generally consider all of these systems of stratification, both that is class, race, and gender. The other part about Marxist theory that I just mentioned very briefly is that oftentimes, though the owner managerial class has some power or influence over enforcement structures in society, so the police, the military, and oftentimes have influence with people with political or financial power. And so Marx argued that it's this group of people that actually tries to shape the system so that it continues to perpetuate their advantage in society, whereas others are facing constraint and less opportunity as a result of the way society is organized.